It's time for this week's Uplift. 3 ordinary guys that want you to find the freedom that is available by knowing our Lord Jesus Christ. So sit back and enjoy Uplift, brought to you by the Fulcrum Center. Visit our site at thefulcrumcenter.org.
Well, good evening, Phil.
Hey, Chad. How are you?
Well, I'm not as scholarly as you are. For the people, for the people watching on video, if you're watching on video, you can see that Phil's sitting in front of the Bliss Personal Library. He looks very serious. You need like a pipe or something. in a jacket,
Yeah. Well, this library has been in my background for Uplift for several weeks.
Yeah.
But I've just been further away, and you probably didn't recognize it. I just brought things a little closer. I thought it gave a nice little backdrop.
Yeah, you need like a leather chair and a fireplace off to the side.
And a smoking robe.
Yeah. I was gonna say a sport jacket, whatever.
Yep. Yeah, sport jacket. Yeah.
Yeah. That's pretty interesting.
I'll consider that for next week.
Yeah. I'm gonna have to do something here. I've got a little bookshelf, but I don't have as many books as you do.
Yeah. Well, I got all kinds too. I got computer books, I got Bibles, I got fiction novels behind me. And then of course I got this too. And
yeah. You got a plug.
Because the third one's coming out in a month, less than a month.
Yeah.
The third one is coming out, and it's just about ready. And wow, a lot of work. Be glad to finally get it done.
So for those listening on podcast, Phil just plugged his books.
Yeah. The Pop-Up Pastor series.
Yeah, the Pop-Up Pastor series. Yeah, I'm definitely interested in getting a third book. I heard it's really good from what I've heard so far.
Yeah, that's what people are telling me anyway. I'm a little biased, so I can't say. I liked it, though. I really liked the way God took the direction of this one. He's ultimately leading to a fourth book in which this series will end, and it'll be tied up in a nice, neat little bow when it's all done.
Yeah. I'm sure.
Yeah.
I'm sure it'll be good.
Because I have no doubt about that. And that's what we want to talk about tonight.
That just segues us right into our topic.
Right.
Tonight.
Yeah, self-doubt. So something that I dealt with for a very, very long time. And even when I felt like I had finally kicked it out, it would come back. And, I still have bouts with it, but it's easier to kick back out now because of what God has done for me and the things that he has showed me. But, there are probably people out there struggling with self-doubt. It could be anything. The Lord speaks to us all the time. That's what a relationship is. He's constantly talking. And we're just, we're hearing, but are we listening? And are we listening and then doing? The book of James tells us to not just hear the word, but do what it says. Mm-hmm. And God he's asking us at times to do things, and we sometimes have self-doubt. I know I did for a long time.
Yeah, I feel like we could talk about this for probably 3 hours.
We probably could. There's no doubt about that.
Yeah, and since Robert's not here, we'll have to cover for him with the scriptural references, because he'd go right to scripture and give us scriptural references.
Yes, he would.
And there were tons and tons of them.
Oh yeah, no doubt.
Back to Moses, Moses was like, yeah, not me.
That's a great guy. Yeah, it's a great place to start. And God worked with him. That's what I really want to emphasize in talking about this is, God could have said, okay, you're not going to believe me. Go get Aaron or go get Ben-Hur or somebody else, Was there really a guy named Ben-Hur, or is that just from the movie? I think there probably was a guy named Ben-Hur. But anyway, go get somebody else. But God knew that Moses would come around. And God worked with him, even in the midst of his doubt, and showed him his power so that he would stop doubting and would start believing. Jesus did the same thing with his disciples.
Yeah.
He worked with them where they were, knowing that they were going to doubt, but then led them out of that doubt. So God, if he can do it with Moses and the disciples, and I know someone right now saying, well, they were in the Bible, of course. No, he does it with everybody. He treats us the same. He will lead you out of this self-doubt and into what he has called you to do.
Yeah. And when you think about it, all those people who were in the Bible, they were people.
Yeah.
Not to belittle any of them, but just because they were in the Bible doesn't mean they weren't people and they didn't have real thoughts and feelings and emotions. I think we could clear down the list, Peter and, Thomas and all those from the New Testament. But I think a lot about Elijah, Elijah had himself so messed up in the head, he went and hid, and God was like, "What are you doing?" And he's like, "I'm alone." And God's like, No, I've got thousands of them. I got thousands of people like you out there. You just don't know about it because you're doubting me.
Right. So that's a great example, actually, because Elijah is someone that was very powerful. And at least twice that I can think of, there's a reference to prior to Jesus coming back that will be in the spirit of Elijah. Well, I guess when he first came, John the Baptist was like Elijah preparing the way. And it is said in Malachi that Elijah will come and prepare the way for his second coming as well. So, and the Bible does that. It doesn't, you don't just see things one time. There's usually 2 or 3 things to go along with it. So, will it be the physical Elijah? I don't know. We read Revelation chapter 11 and maybe, but regardless, Elijah's important. And he doubted. Mm-hmm. He doubted. He was scared. Yeah. There's another emotion for you.
Yeah, the guy who called down fire on Mount Carmel, the guy who cooked little army units that were coming after him with fire. I mean, he didn't do it; God did it. But he was so much in God's favor that he literally called down the fire onto the altar, and all these things. And God favored him so much, and yet he still doubted and was scared and ran and hid. So like that gives us hope. Like we can't. I mean, I guess God might let us call down fire. He hasn't done it yet.
You never know. So how do we overcome doubt, especially self-doubt? I mean, to doubt is one thing, but to doubt yourself, knowing that God has called you, like we talked a little bit about this last week, playing Mr. Potato Head, putting the pieces in the right place. If you know that God's called you to do something and you say, I just don't know, God, are you sure you called me? I think you called Chad instead. Sure. And I just said that God will still work with you, but think about what you're doing. You're telling God, no, you're not right.
Yeah.
Is God ever not right?
Yeah.
He's not playing games with you. If he calls you to do something, he wants you to do it. It's not like, I was just kidding. He doesn't gaslight people. When God calls your name and you can't deny what he's saying, you got to move. Mm-hmm. Because there's blessings in that. There's blessings for other people in that. There's fulfillment of the kingdom of God in that. There's so many things when you don't. But it's okay. So that doesn't help us as to how to overcome, though.
Mm-hmm. Well, there's a lot of answers to that. And basically it starts with, we really have to pray about it because, well, number one, you have to recognize it, right?
Yeah.
Because sometimes we don't even recognize that we're in that situation because, like self-defense, like you can kind of get into this mental, emotional, defense mechanisms, and there's fancy psychological terms for this, but you can kind of gaslight yourself and not even realize that you're doubting. You can
Yeah.
kind of just immediately go into this like mental emotional defense mode
Hmm.
and that sort of thing, and not even realize. But so step number one, I think, is once you realize it, then the Christian thing to do would be to say, well, repent and trust in God. Well, that's okay, that's the answer. But that's easier said than done, obviously. I mean, I think that it's that's why it's important that we read and study the Bible, because we see the real world examples of these people who are written in there.
Right.
And these aren't just cool stories we tell kids in Sunday school classes and that sort of thing. I mean, look at Jonah. I mean, God's like, go to Nineveh, and he's like, no, I'm going to hang a left. And it didn't work out so well. So that's the other thing, though, too, is once we get out of God's plan and go our own way, things usually don't work out. I mean, they certainly haven't in my life, and I'm sure everybody's got examples that they could give in their own lives of that. I mean, for the first 40, 41, 42, 43 years, whatever the math was of my life, I kind of tried to do things my own way. Not kind of. I did try to do things my own way, and in that situation, there's an example of someone who kind of gaslit themselves. Like, I didn't even realize that I was doubting something that was wrong. I
Right.
just thought, oh well, like, I'm responsible for myself because I'm an adult. I'm just going to do what I feel is best, and I wasn't even doing it prayerfully for the most part. Well, now I know better.
Hmm.
So, we really have to pray about it, and we have to talk to God. And something you said earlier is very important, is we have to listen. So we're really good at complaining to God about all of our problems and giving God our laundry list of issues that day. But we're probably not really good at listening, to be quiet and listen for God, for him to give us the direction that we need.
Right. So I got a question. What causes us to doubt? I think the number one thing is probably fear.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I'm not going to take this new job. Why? Because I'm afraid of failure. Okay. I'm not going to stand up in church. Why? Because I'm afraid of ridicule. Or there's all kinds of things. I'm not going to take this risk because I'm afraid of, losing something.
Yeah.
All kinds of fears. But God doesn't bring fear to us.
Right.
No, and the Bible tells us that perfect love drives out fear, and God is perfect love. And if we allow God, we listen, as you said, and we act, then we're moving in his love, and it will drive out the fear, and next thing you know, there's no doubt.
Right.
So we overcome, with prayer, reading the Bible, fellowship with one another. It's okay to say, hey, Chad, I'm thinking about doing this. What do you think? It's not like I'm asking you to tell me. I'm just asking, it's a relationship, a friendship that we have with one another that mimics what we have with God. Because maybe God has said something to you, or he said something to me for you. Anything like that could happen. So that's important as well. And when we practice these spiritual disciplines, the more God fills us up with his Spirit, the less we run to fear. Faith will push the fear out, like two opposite or two magnets that repel one another. Faith will push the fear out, or fear will push your faith out if you let it. But we push that fear out, and next thing you know, we're not doubting as much. And we're realizing, I feel like I'm closer to God.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So it is possible.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And, it's something that each of us walk individually. And some people probably struggle with it more than others because I think Robert said on here before that, we all kind of have our thing, So,
Yeah.
and like he
Yeah.
said, oh, he said, I never had a problem believing that God heals people, but I always had a problem believing that God would provide finances for me and my family. And,
Yeah.
I know like for you yourself, I don't think you'll mind me sharing this, but
No,
you've
I don't mind.
experienced doubt before, like we've shared that back and forth. And
Mm-hmm.
I've got certain strongholds in my life that I struggle with, that, food addictions and all that sort of thing relating to food and all that sort of thing. And so we each have our thing, and some people may experience this, and some people may just, not really have a problem with it and be pretty bold and really trusting of God just by nature. And I think it kind of goes back to, how we're individually gifted per se,
Mm-hmm.
like, so each of us both have some prophetic gifting. And when it comes to that prophetic gifting, doubt is a major thing.
Mm-hmm.
And so just to
Sure.
kind of yeah,
Yeah.
just briefly. So we talked last week about Mr. Potato Head,
Yeah.
but basically, it's important, I think, for new Christians to find out, number one, if you're a new Christian, or even if you're not, new to the faith, really kind of find out what your gifting is, just to try to help you learn how to function the best or how to flow the best in your church or in your I think it's important for people to understand how that kind of God's wired them, at least in that season in their life.
Mm-hmm.
Because there are certain things that come with certain things, like if you're an evangelist, you're probably, I don't want to stereotype them, but they probably have less doubt than I do about approaching people and inviting them to church on Sunday.
Oh yeah. Right.
Just an example. I mean, like,
That's a perfect
for
example.
yeah, like for me and my wife, like evangelism would be clear off the list. Like we are not gifted that way whatsoever.
Right.
We're both kind of quiet, introverted people,
Right.
and so if God was like, "Hey, walk up to that crowd of people and start, talking about me to them, and invite them to church Sunday," it'd be like, "Ooh, like, I think I have a dental appointment."
I'm glad you brought that up because I said years ago, and I say this a lot. Not everybody is Billy Graham. And I
Right.
hear pastors, we got to get out there, we got to witness our faith. Well, not everybody's good at that. And sure, you can witness your faith just by flashing a smile.
Right.
You don't have to go out on the street corner and skip that dental appointment to bring somebody into church. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, but you said something earlier today when we were talking. I don't remember what we were talking about. And you said, that's why you're a pastor. And I said, you know what? Yeah, when you move in the gifts that God has given you, it just becomes natural. So going back to last week, it's really important that we discover what those gifts are, because as you operate in them, you don't have doubt because you know it's your gift. You know God has provided it. You know the Holy Spirit's leading you. There's no room for doubt there. That's all faith.
Right. And another thing I think people experience doubt with just in their common everyday life is when you've had bad experiences,
Mm-hmm.
and whether they're your fault or not. So look, in the professional world, my day job, I'm in construction estimating, and we estimate large projects. We're a large commercial construction contractor, one of the top ones in the country. And so, as in my role of have been there since God created dirt almost, um, I train new people, and there's a tremendous amount of doubt. The new
Mm.
person who's doing this, and even somebody who's been doing it for a long time, we're working on difficult projects with, conflicting information, not so good designs and information and things like that. There's a lot of doubt. And and especially if you have something go bad. So, like, let's say you experience something bad, no matter what your job is or no matter what, let's say, for example, let's say you're a nurse and you had something happen, and like something bad happened to one of the patients you're caring for, and it was something that maybe either it was a mistake or maybe it wasn't even a mistake. Maybe it's just something happenstance that happened that went badly that you weren't even responsible for. It wasn't your fault per se. But the next time that situation happens, you're going to be really doubting. You're going to be skeptical. You're going to have fear and all those sorts of things. And it's important somehow, some way to really take all that stuff to God and just say, when something bad happens, just be like, God, like I'm just, number one, this happened, kind of lay it out on the table with him and say, heal me from this.
Yes,
You know?
absolutely.
Yeah. So, like, you're a computer programmer. Like, so if you ever messed up code somewhere in a program, I'm sure that's never happened. But if it were to happen, and the something happened bad with the data and stuff like that, that you'd have to go back, and you and whoever would have to go back and fix all this stuff. Man, like the next time you go to do something with that code in that regard, you'd be like, it would be in the back of your mind.
Yeah, sure.
And yeah, so sometimes it's like, we talk a lot about healing on this program, but healing can be like a sort of a restoration from bad situations and doubt.
Yeah, and okay, let's look at it this way. Most people walk on 2 feet, unless they got some kind of disability or something. So the people that are walking at some point have fallen, either when they were 2 years old learning to walk, or, I've tripped over my own feet. But it doesn't mean that I just stop walking. I don't crawl all over the place now because I might fall. Do you know what I mean? So, when you, like, you're right. When you make those mistakes, you take it to God, and whether it's a sinful mistake or just a, hey, I messed up the data mistake, you take it to God and you get that healing. And the next time you just don't even think about the failure. You think about, okay, no, I know I did it wrong this time, so here's how I'm going to do it right going forward.
Yeah.
Because God is the one who will change your mindset to think that way.
Yeah.
To get you. That's part of the healing. But you don't just not do it. Maybe you had something bad happened in church. My oldest daughter, still to this day, it really upsets me. She was 12 or 13 years old, I think, maybe 14. She was a teenager. And some lady said to her, "We don't wear tank tops in church." And it was like 90 degrees outside in the middle of summer. And it was not a very revealing tank top. And she was a very young teenager. It was very modest looking. I got very upset. She never wanted to go back to church. She had a really, really difficult time ever going back because that was always in the back of her mind. So I helped her, prayed with her about that. And though she doesn't go to church every week, she's certainly not going to church because of that one incident. So she got healed from that. So if you have some kind of church hurt, don't just stop going to church. Find a different church. There's a church. Ask God where you should go.
Right.
And I'm telling you, I have never, ever seen a church where the ceiling caved in because somebody walked in it. It's never happened. It has absolutely never happened.
You want to talk about doubt. You just hit the nail on the head. I mean, when you were talking about your daughter in that situation, I mean, that happens a lot. But the other thing that happens a lot is if I had $1 for every time I've heard somebody say, "Oh, I'm not good enough," or I all these sort of things. Everybody who says that, well, I guess I shouldn't say everybody because there's different reasons. Sometimes people say that and they just don't want to go. But there's a lot of people that we know who really do doubt themselves and doubt, God's, grace and forgiveness and all that sort of thing. And they're just like, oh, like, well, if I've done so much bad in my life, I'm divorced or I drink or, who knows what. everybody's got their thing, but they really feel like they're not good enough to go to church, or they don't want to dress up, and they feel like there's a pressure to wear like a suit or a dress or something, and be all dressed up to go to church and all this stuff. And it's like, no, like that's a huge lie of the devil that's been just
Mm-hmm.
so rampant in today's world. And it's so good. It's just like when the devil got Eve, Adam and Eve,
Mm-hmm.
with the tempted them with the fruit. It's the same thing. It's just a different story, but it's the same thing. All these people walking around feeling like they're not good enough, and they'll never go to church, and they're going to miss out on salvation. And it's a
Mm-hmm.
sad thing.
Right, right, and you're absolutely right. And a little bit of a personal testimony in that regard. I knew many years ago that God called me to be a pastor. Probably 30 years ago is when I first heard him calling me to be a pastor. And I didn't do anything for the first 5 years because I thought I would retire. But I became a pastor, struggled, wanted to quit. God reassured me. I can't do this. I don't know what I'm doing. I didn't know anything. I was so green. I was not ready to be a pastor in my mind. But in God's mind, I was. And he brought me along. And then there was a time when I was not, and for a lot of different reasons, but the opportunity came up to be the pastor again, and at a church. And I said, well, I'm divorced. I can't do it now. And they're like, do you know how many people are in this church that are divorced and are leaders in this church? You move on from it. And so I prayed about it, and God's like, I've been trying to get you to come back to be a pastor again. So I did. So what I'm saying is, when you do, and we often do it, say, I'm not qualified, just remember that God doesn't call the qualified. He qualifies the called.
Right.
He will make you qualified. I didn't become who I am on my own. I became who I am because of God and nothing else, no one else.
Right.
And
Yeah.
he can do it for anyone.
That's right. I got a weird sort of analogy, but I can't let it go, and I don't think God wants me to let it go because somebody needs to hear this. The first Top Gun movie.
Okay.
The first Top Gun movie. It was Tom Cruise and Mark Edwards. I think Mark Edwards played Goose. Maverick and Goose, right?
Yep.
And I mean, obviously, this isn't a movie you're going to show in church, but this is a good analogy that somebody needs to hear. So, like Tom Cruise, Maverick in that movie, he was this macho fighter pilot dude. And, they're flying their F-14 Tomcat and all this stuff, And what happens? There's some sort of malfunction, and Goose dies.
Mm-hmm.
Well, the next time, that Tom Cruise gets up in the air, he's got a new wingman or a new, co-pilot. Mm-hmm. And I forget what that guy's name was, but it wasn't Goose because Goose died. The Goose died.
It was Hollywood.
Yeah. Okay.
Hollywood.
See, look at that.
Yeah.
The pastor knew who it was. Well, anyway, so what happens?
He froze.
He froze. He freaked out. He had doubt. He was like, he was in the whoever it was, the Russian MiG or whoever was, on his tail, and they were going to shoot him down and all this stuff, and they were yelling at him like, you got to get back in the game. You got to get back in the game. You got to get back in the game. And then finally, like he, did a very unchristian thing, and he was trying to talk to Goose.
Yeah.
We can't talk to the dead. Yeah, we can't talk to the dead. There's a lesson we can that could be a whole another half an hour next week. But anyway, so the moral of the story is you got to get back in the game.
Yeah. Yeah, that's exactly what I'm saying. Just like when you're walking, you don't just quit walking the first time you fall. You get back up and you walk again. You got to get back in the game. And if I would have quit the first time I failed as a pastor, and I failed many times as a pastor, if I would have quit every time I failed, I wouldn't be here where I am today for doing it as long as I have. Mm-hmm. And I'm going to fail again. I know that. But you know what I'm going to do when I fail? I'm going to take it to God and say, where did I go wrong? Help me in the future and help me to, well, will you correct this or help me to correct this, whatever you want to do. You just get back in it.
Yeah. In the world of business, we say sometimes you have to fail your way to success.
Yeah.
for our new young people that are coming into the business, we say, well, you have to kind of fail your way to success. You have to kind of take your lumps and hope they're not too bad, but take your lumps and learn from them. And
Right.
pastors and people do this. The apostles did it. When you look at if you read any of the stuff in the New Testament, you're going to see what happens. I mean, it's not like Jesus walked around and grabbed Peter and all the rest of them and John and all of them and was like, "Oh, okay, you guys are perfect. I'm just going to lay my hand on you and you're going to be perfect."
Right.
No, they stumbled and bumbled their way for 3 years.
And then Peter denied him 3 times.
Yep.
And became one of the greatest apostles ever.
Yep.
Yeah.
Doubt.
Fail your way to success. I like that.
Yeah. So I have a feeling we're going to name this something like, Maverick and Goose.
Yeah. Talk to me, Goose.
Yeah. Talk to me, Goose. Talk to me, Goose.
It's a great line from the movie.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of Top Gun. And the second one, too.
Okay.
Yeah,
We haven't watched the second one. We're not really movie people. But I do want to watch the second one eventually.
It is very, very good. It's very good.
Did Tom Cruise have any doubt?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
But he overcame it.
Okay. Well, there we go. Spoiler alert.
Yeah. Yeah.
People like me
That's all
who
I'm
haven't
saying.
watched the movie. Yeah, a year later, a year after it came out.
Yeah. Oh. All right, Chad. This is a great conversation.
That's right.
You got anything else?
Yeah, I do.
All
So
right,
every time
throw it out there.
Every time we go to record one of these, I have doubt.
Oh, really?
I do. I have doubt. Every time we record one of these, and we talk about a topic, I think, well, we can fill 3 minutes with that.
Yeah. Yeah.
I doubt we can go half an hour, and you know what? We usually can go an hour. We usually go 45 minutes.
Yeah.
So there you go. We're a walking testimony.
Yes. I wanted to throw this out because you had brought up that I struggled with doubt for a long time. And I finally got to the point where I took it to God and I said, okay, God, what is the root of this doubt? This was probably February this year, roughly January, February this year, 2024. And he showed me. But not only did it help me overcome the doubt, but what he showed me helped me in so many other ways. My doubt was heavily rooted in some childhood trauma that I had experienced when I was ill. And this is actually, if you read my third book, it's in there. The trauma that one of the main characters goes through was actually me. It was my testimony wrote into the book. But that trauma became PTSD and caused me all kinds of problems, including doubt. And once I asked God and he revealed to me, then he worked with me on how to overcome this trauma. And it didn't happen overnight. It took probably about a month, maybe a little longer. I'm not even saying that I'm completely over it yet. He might have to deal with me again. But what a tremendous change in my life. And the doubt is gone.
Yeah.
Once you find the root of something, and I'm not saying everybody's doubt's rooted in trauma. That's not what I'm saying. That's what it was for me.
Right.
Because it was a big problem for me. And it just that engaging God in one thing led to other things, because God knows why you do what you do. He knows all your strongholds. He knows all your weaknesses. He knows your strengths, and he works it all together. As Romans 8:28 tells us, for know that in all things God works together for the good of those who love him and are called according to his purpose. Mm-hmm. And you're called according to his purpose. Mm-hmm. Whether you believe it or not, you are.
Right.
Everybody is.
Everybody who's born is.
Yeah.
And it's interesting to watch people. I won't go down this rabbit hole, but people who are absolutely not believers, but yet still gifted by God in
Mm.
kingdom ways. I
Hmm.
know people. I knew people who despise God, but they are operating in this natural world,
Hmm.
in they're the way that they were intended to operate in the kingdom,
Absolutely. I see it too. And it's amazing
and
when I see it.
they have no idea.
Yeah. Yep. For sure.
Mm.
Well, that's just the way God works. He is good.
Yep. Good episode, Phil.
Yeah, it was. Thanks for joining in with me. I'll be here next week.
Yeah. Hopefully Robert will be back.
Yeah. I know in a few weeks I'm going to be going up to Ashtabula again, but I think that's probably another month before that'll happen. I think I have to talk to Tanya to find out. But anyway, I should be here for a while, and hopefully Robert will be back, and we'll have another great episode.
Another great episode.
All right. Thanks for tuning in, everybody. Please leave us a comment, share some feedback. We'd love to hear from you. And share this video or this podcast, however you're listening to it or watching it, so that others can enjoy what we have to say. Because God's given us the words. We're just speaking into the microphone.
That's right.
That's all we do. All
That's
right.
right.
Good night, everybody.
Bye.